I believe it was this past All Souls Day where I had a kind of funny realization at Mass. And it was this. The priest was talking about how much he loved his car, and he loved taking care of his car and cleaning it, maintaining it. And he loved the feel of driving it around. And yet he often thinks about how someday he won't have the car. And he pivots at this point in his homily and essentially says to the congregation, nothing that you have, nothing that you own matters. And someday it will all be taken away from you. You won't have it anymore, and you will die. And as he's saying this, he's kind of smiling and chuckling a little bit like I am now. And I just remember sitting in Mass and thinking, what a uniquely Catholic experience to gather together with an entire congregation and listen to a man wearing extremely ornate robes talk about the fact that we're all going to die with a smile on his face, and it's all totally normal. Nothing that I just described is in any way out of the ordinary for someone who is steeped in the liturgical traditions of the Church. I genuinely love the artistry and the poetry, the beauty and the mystery of the rituals that the Church walks us through every year during Lent. It begins on a Wednesday, during which each of us is marked with ashes and asked to remember our death. Men are flames, slowly out we burn. From dust we came, to ash we will return. And it culminates on a Friday in which we commemorate the ultimate death and have the audacity to call it good. And when the soft orange glow of your amber once is faded before the breath and the clay, having death reconsummated, love will speak, she will say, do not be afraid, do not be afraid, do not be afraid, for me you were made. So given how strange this Lent has been, I want to rewind the clock about 8 years to Lent 2012. This was arguably a happier Lent. At least it wasn't quite as existential as the one that we're currently in. But this was the time when I wrote a song called The Great Flood. The process of writing this song, it really was, for me, a unique creative process that I didn't necessarily realize it at the time, but was wrapped up in my liturgical movements. And you'll understand that more as the story unfolds. But to get to the beginning of it, it was this is pretty early on in Lent. I was at my girlfriend's house. She's now my wife. And I remember at one point sitting on her couch, and I picked up her guitar, and I started plucking these notes. Now, one question as a songwriter that I'm often asked is, what comes first? When you write a song, what comes first? Is it the music or the lyrics? And the answer is yes. It depends. It's different for each song. And this song began with a few simple notes. I remember playing that and thinking, that's really nice. I like that. And I just kept plucking it. And then came a very simple accompanying melody. Oh, and I thought, it's really nice. I like that. And I remember just sitting in her living room playing that over and over again, no changes. I wasn't adding anything new to it. I was just listening to those simple notes and humming along, and as I did that, I felt peaceful. And I wasn't in a hurry to finish it. So over the course of the next several days, I would pick up my guitar and I would just play it. Oh. And every time I would think, it's really nice. I wonder what this song is going to be about. Because that's part of the process. The act of creating is just as much an act of discovering. And at one point I remember playing and humming along and thinking, I think I'm going to call it The Great Flood. That's what it sounds like this song should be called. Oh, how great was the flood. And then Holy Thursday came. And I remember walking the 2 blocks from my house to the church. It was a beautiful old church in Baltimore. The attendance was usually pretty low. And I remember walking in and seeing that there weren't even 12 people there yet. And the service was starting in about 2 minutes. And I thought, well, priest has to wash the feet of 12 people, so I guess I'm getting my feet washed. And that part of the liturgy comes when I just got out of my seat and I walked up and I sat down on one of the chairs set up in front of the altar. And I remove my flip-flop. And the priest gets up out of his chair. And that act of simply standing up out of his chair was not easy. He was an elderly priest. He had just recently had a hip replacement. He was hobbling with a cane. It was not easy for him to get around. And I remember watching him move from person to person as he made his way towards me and being in awe of the humility with which he was doing this. And I started to feel guilty. Here I am, this young 20-something, able-bodied young man, and I'm just waiting and watching for this feeble old man to make his way towards me so that he can wash my filthy feet. And in that moment, I thought, this is it. This is the Great Flood. Oh, how great was the flood that washed over me like a kiss between 2 lovers were your hands upon my feet. Oh, how great was the flood that passed my lips unsung, like a newborn babe's first taste of life. It danced on my tongue. Oh, how great was the flood that fell
from your side, like a knife into a mother's chest when her only child dies. Oh, how great was the flood that swelled in this sea, when the water rose, it took my breath, but you gave it back to me. When the water rose, it took my breath, but you gave it back to me. Oh, how great was the flood that was poured out on my head, giving love to what love had brought forth, and life to what was dead.
I know that we can't be together right now. We can't gather together in person to walk through the rituals, to celebrate the feasts, to welcome the new members into our community. But there still exists a great flood of grace, of mercy, of love, waiting to pour itself out over us.